My father ruined my childhood and turned me into his stepson's caretaker. Now, he's begging me to help him. I lost my mom to a long-term health issue when I was 10. During the years when my mom was sick, we struggled immensely. My dad worked multiple jobs to cover the medical bills, and I often had to fend for myself, taking on more responsibilities around the house. It was a lonely and stressful time, filled with uncertainty and fear. Despite our efforts, we could never seem to catch a break. We were constantly worried about making ends meet, and the stress took a toll on both of us. The cost of treatment drained my parents' finances, and it was just dad and me after mom died. No extended family. To be honest, I kind of felt somewhat relief that my mother had passed and not struggled anymore, and the same for dad and me. We could already have rest. However, Dad started dating when I was 12, and he met Jane. After a few months, he told me her son had a form of brain cancer and was very sick, and that they were getting married, and he would be helping to take care of her son. We went from 2 to 4 in a tiny 2-bedroom house, and I shared room with a terminally ill toddler I didn't know. We had to make so many changes. No more takeout, which was a once-a-month treat before that. I had to stop my only extracurricular activity. He had no friends over because noise bothered him. There was no space that was just mine. No extra money for celebrating birthdays and Christmas. I was being asked by my dad and Jane to take care of her son constantly, and it is draining me. They were always out claiming to loof for financial assistance for her son, but they would often return home with takeouts or shopping bags. But I reassided by the passing years. When I was 15, Dad and I got into a huge argument because I was never home and always said no to helping Jane take care of her son. When I told him how much I hated the situation, he looked me in the eye and told me to grow up. He also told me I was old enough to understand that life wasn't always easy or fun, and that a rougher life could build character. He told me we grew our family, which was a good thing, and one of the consequences of that sometimes is having less, but it was worth it for the extra love. I told him that was bullshit. He told me I was not his whole life, and he would not stop doing what he wanted to do because of me. Then he told me to never ever say anything negative around his stepson because he was a kid and didn't need to know I resented him for being sick. After that talk, I was even more distant. I left when I was 17, right after graduation, and couch surfed until I went to college. I didn't stay in touch. When I was 19, I heard that my dad's stepson had died. I met my wife in college, and we married this past June. Then, in November, my dad showed up and told me he wanted to talk. I shut the door in his face. He kept showing up where I was to speak. After getting annoyed with him, I agreed to meet him for a coffee. He told me how he'd ended up divorced from Jane, and how his stepson had died, and he looked disappointed when he learned I knew. He told me how he'd been struggling a lot, and how he was hoping I could help him out. I laughed in his face and told him he had some nerve. He mentioned how he'd spent a lot of money on finding me, and wanted us to repair things, but he also needed my help. I told him no way. He became angry, and told me he was my dad, and was always there for me, and I owed him. I told him I owed him nothing, and threw most of his words back in his face, including that he needed to grow up, and that he was not my whole life, and would not stop me from doing what I wanted.